Here's a review of the Featherstone Moondance 25 Top Quilt. Now, I recently just went on my first ever backpacking trip down here in SoCal. It was just an overnight 5 miles in, 5 miles out down in Crystal Cove, and I needed a sleeping bag, but then I was like, I don't really want a sleeping bag. I know it's gonna be too hot. I'm not really too fond of being completely bundled into one, so I was looking up sleeping quilts, and I found this one. I gave it a shot, and this thing is amazing. Next to my Helinox backpacking chair, this was my favorite piece of gear that I had on this trip. And the reasons why I'm gonna get into, but first off, let me just show you how small it is. This one is the long one because I'm 6 foot tall. I just wanted to make sure I fit in it just fine. And I believe this one's 1 pound, 11 ounces and about 90 inches long. This is my sleeping pad and it's not much bigger. Like it's clearly bigger, but it's not much bigger for being a complete sleeping quilt that I can shove into the bottom of my backpack without any weight at all. This thing is awesome. Let's dig into it. One of the first things you'll notice is when you just touch the outside sack and then when you touch the pad itself, the material's really, really cool. It's not like the sleeping bags you used to use as a kid when you go camping or anything like that. It's a very nice, soft down feel to it. And I just love it. I don't know how else to explain it other than it was just really cool. I've never used a top quilt before. I'm just used to sleeping bags and just feeling miserable while I sleep because I'm so bundled in and just so tight and it's so hot. And that's the main thing that you'll notice too, is that when you're in a sleeping bag, you can't just kick off your sleeping bag because then you're gonna freeze. But this guy allows you to maneuver around because as you can see, what makes it different, if you're kind of wondering that question, is that this one is open on the bottom. You're using your sleeping pad as your insulation as well as the top quilt. You're not using like the entirety of the bag. What makes this great is the fact that there's a foot box down at the bottom. So basically what I did was I wrapped my feet in the bottom and then I had all this other room to like maneuver around if I needed to, like, let's say I just wanted to cool off a little bit. I just let my shoulder out or my leg out. I'd kick my leg out and let it get a little bit of air and then I'd put it back in when it's too cold. It comes with these straps here so you could lock it in a little better if you wanted to use it more like a sleeping bag. So you can just kind of like dive into it. But what I did is I did all of them but the bottom ones. I shoved my feet in at the very end just like this, and it was perfect. And how I know I loved this thing was when I was super, super, super hot, and I was wondering like, it must be really hot outside. So then I let some of my shoulder just be exposed, right? My shoulder started to freeze. It's probably only like 50 degrees, but still my shoulder was just really cold. And I'm like wondering, I'm like, wow, this thing's really, really good, isn't it? And so I put it back on my shoulder and I was warm again. And it got to the point where I actually sweated a little bit using this. But again, it's the middle of June out here in Southern California, so it is hotter, but we were up high enough that it was colder and chillier. But this thing I cannot recommend more. I love this quilt. Being that I'm 6 foot, my feet are all the way at the end. You can't really tell in the full frame here, but this is it all completely over my head and it's still just fine. Like I have more room. I could just completely sleep under here if I wanted to. And another thing I really loved about this was packing it up in the morning. So what happened was I'm not the best sleeping bag folder. I'm kind of illiterate when it comes to folding sleeping bags. So I tried it a few times. And I said, you know what? I don't even need to do this. Why am I bothering? That came with a stuff sack. So I literally just put the bottom in, started stuffing it, and within a couple of minutes, it was fully into that bag that you saw at the beginning of here. Not in here any fancy way, nothing like that. I couldn't manage it, and it was perfect. Here's the last couple pushes of this thing. I tried to roll it up for you guys just to see if I could maybe rally behind filming it on video, but I am just really bad when it comes to sleeping bags and tents. So I stuffed it in the stuff sack, and is perfectly good to go. It actually did come with some compression straps that you could use for it if you want to get it even tighter, but I think this is small enough, it's light enough, and it's compact enough that I actually ended up using those on my tent, so it was great for that. So if you're into backpacking, light camping, or just honestly just need a sleeping quilt that isn't very heavy and will keep you completely warm, like the reason why I'm so excited is because this thing kept me warmer than my sleeping bags. Like it's rated so cold and it kept me so warm all at the same time of being under 2 pounds. I thought this was one of the coolest things. And the fact that it was so small, my pack just sent me over the moon with it. So if you guys are in need of the market for a sleeping bag or sleeping quilt, or if you just never tried a sleeping quilt before, this is definitely a first good go to grab because it worked for me and I don't think I'll ever change anytime soon.